The decision heard around the country. Alex Murdaugh will not get a new murder trial. That decision was handed down yesterday by Chief Justice Jean Toll. Now, joining us this morning for analysis of what happened in the courtroom, Attorney Taylor Bell. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good. All right. So first up, I got to ask you, were you surprised by yesterday's decision?
Not necessarily. I don't believe that Alec was going to get any kind of bones thrown to him from the bench, being the judge. I think that it was a very high standard that was set from the beginning based on the law that was followed and was ordered by Justice Toll. So I wasn't necessarily surprised by the decision. I was surprised at how quick she came out and made that decision, though.
That's right. I mean, she basically said, I'll give the decision in about 15 minutes. Now, something else a lot of people have been talking about. Becky Hill's testimony. As many of you know, she's a clerk of court accused of tampering with the jury. Do you feel like her testimony hurt or helped the state?
So in terms of her testimony, I think her testimony was what it was. I think Justice Toll probably said it best, that there were some credibility issues of her testimony. She didn't come out and directly say that she perjured herself in any type of manner, but she did come out and say that there were issues, but despite those issues, she does not believe that that conduct influenced the jury's decision back in the jury room to the extent that it would lead to the trial decision being overturned and a new trial being granted. I do think down the road, her testimony probably will hurt the state in terms of appeal, because the judge did make a finding of fact. Justice Toll sat there on the bench making a finding of fact, meaning she was finding whether or not a witness was credible or not credible. That's typically a decision for a jury, but in an evidentiary hearing, which we set in that position yesterday, she was the finder of fact, and she did make a finding of fact that Becky Hill was not credible. So that's been determined, and that will be in her order. That's what she published from the bench, and therefore it's something that the defense can use down the road to show potentially in the appeal process facts that do not support the decision that was made by her. That's what I would argue from the defense perspective during an appeal process of the motion for a new trial.
Now, one of the most talked about moments, I mean, this blew up on social media. You've probably seen it. So we know that yesterday's hearing was briefly interrupted after we learned that the jurors' phones were not confiscated, and Judge Toll was not happy about it. Take a listen.
I have to report this to you, and I'm very, very unhappy about it, but there's nothing to do but put it on the record, and then I will proceed with questioning the rest of the jurors. The jurors' cell phones were not confiscated or taken from them, and they tuned this thing in on court TV and listened to all of what just went on. So you may make whatever statement you like to make, and then I'm going to go on and question the jurors.
Now, Taylor, let me ask you this. How big of a deal is this, and what impact could this possibly have on future proceedings?
So initially the defense asked that the witnesses be sequestered. That is why the testimony on Friday from the first juror that testified was the judge asked reporters not to comment on the questions that were asked, not to comment on the answers by that juror. That was her attempt to sequester those witnesses without technically sequestering them, putting them up in hotels, keeping them away from everybody else. Now, that clearly did not help if they were sitting there in the jury room watching on their cell phone court TV of the initial juror. I believe they listened to Juror Z, who was the first juror yesterday to be questioned and testify. So it presents problems that was their testimony influenced by that juror's testimony. I don't believe that their testimony was was substantially similar. I don't think that it necessarily aligned completely. I think there was another juror that made comments or testified that Becky Hill had made comments to them. However, down the road, again, it's another issue. Another issue that, from a defense perspective, that's going to be brought up during the appeal process.
All right, we have just a few seconds left. Really quickly, can you tell us what's next for Murdaugh?
Well, we still have the direct appeal, which was the appeal from the trial court's decision. The question is whether or not the appeal from the motion for a new trial is considered an interlocutory appeal, meaning it's an appeal from not the final decision. So are those going to be treated together under one appeal, or is it going to be is it going to be treated separately in an appeal process?
Attorney Bell, thank you so much for joining us this morning for a breakdown of everything that happened in yesterday's proceedings. Very, very interesting. On the other side.